It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. Joining me today is head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin. As you can tell by the backdrop. No, Alan Saunders, of course, joining me the show. I don't want to throw off the audio listeners and then be like, wait, what? So if you're not watching on YouTube, you might have been very confused there. Alan has the Steelers backdrop behind him right now, and it's the same as if Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, Art Rooney II would be speaking at the podium. So that's why I wanted to say that.
I just want to try this on for size. Good afternoon.
Drive.
Good afternoon. Drive.
There we go. Alan, what I want to do today, because today was the last day of Steelers OTAs, is kind of go over like a recap, maybe some guys that stood out, surprised you positively and negatively, kind of like reset where things are at as we gear up for mandatory minicamp and then, of course, training camp. First things first, we did have a question about Cam Sutton's contract status. And, you can tackle that, obviously, before we dive into everything else.
Yeah, so it was Benjamin44 said the Steelers are getting Sutton for 2/3 of the veteran minimum, but then you said the NFL is donating his checks to charity. Who's paying that money? Yeah, the Steelers will actually pay the money, and then Sutton will pay the money back to the NFL. And then the NFL donates that fine money to an NFLPA charity that deals with both taking care of former players in need, and also, I believe, does some stuff with like access to football, like builds youth fields and things like that. But the important number is that it doesn't count against the Steelers salary cap. And so, he'll be a very, very cheap date for the Steelers this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. We asked for comments yesterday. We got a ton of them, both agreeing and disagreeing, and that is totally fine. My stance on this has been what it is going to be. I respect everybody's opinion. My only thing that I've asked for the entire time is consistency. So however you feel about the subject, I just hope that you are consistent on this matter as you have been in the past and will continue to be in the future. With that said, Alan, we can dive into the rest of this now. I said I want to kind of recap how OTAs went for you, what stood out in a positive or negative way, kind of reset where the roster's at. I actually have a question for you at the end of this, by the way, that I haven't brought up yet. So, but let's dive into it from the start of it to the finish. What has kind of stood out to you since OTAs?
Do you want me to just kind of like pick a position or like big picture? Is that what you're thinking? Big picture?
Let's start big picture.
Big picture to me is I feel like I learned a lot about what Arthur Smith wants to do with offense, what they're going to look like, in ways that I didn't really know before. You can kind of see it on tape, and it's one thing. You learn a lot looking at it up front. You learn about talking to the people on defense that are playing against it. I think the things that really stand out to me is, it's like if you give a 2-sentence description of the offense, it doesn't sound that different than like the 2-sentence description of a Matt Canada offense, but the details are vastly different. I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to say this and it's going to sound like something that you've heard before, right? Where like they're really good at varying tempo, at varying the cadence, using shifts and motions to keep defenses off guard and keep them simple. I think that's something that I didn't really know about this offense that I really feel pretty strongly about right now. They use a bunch of formations, weird formations, different formations, people in places where you don't expect them to line up. And they use a lot of bunches, a lot of compressed sets. You're never, compared to like, okay, the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Cincinnati Bengals are lining up out of the huddle, I can sit there and point on the field where Tyler Boyd's not there anymore. Jermaine Burton's going to be here. T. Higgins is going to be here. Tight end's going to be here. The running back, like they're in the same place every time. This offense, the pieces are never in the same place, ever. They're always all over the place. And I think the end result is you get an offense that is unpredictable. You get an offense that is difficult to play against in terms of it stresses communication. It takes away some of the more complicated coverages that defenses can do because they don't have the time to get that timing right. And so a lot of that stuff is stuff that Matt Canada was trying to do. I just feel like there is a higher level of communication in the offense. There's an understanding of what the plan is, how it's going to work, how, why things are being done. And it seems like there's a lot more follow through about, hey, like we're doing this and then like make it count, like there'll be a motion where the running back leaves the backfield and sprints out towards the sideline at the snap. And then like Justin Fields will run a quarterback draw where that linebacker has vacated the space, right? But then maybe they'll just throw the swing past the running back. Like it just seems like there's a higher level of connectivity of the ideas where like the concepts actually fit together and they work and they mesh in a way that I just didn't ever see. And I say that despite the fact that like the defense has dominated OTAs. I expected to. I think you can see the plan a lot more clearly from where I stand right now than where I did a month ago.
Yeah, specifically with emotion, I wanted to ask you about because I had a conversation with somebody, well connected, and basically the way that it was put to me in terms of the motion was like we talked about the motion a lot with Matt Canada too, but it seems more purposeful, and maybe that's not something you'll see until like training camp really play out. But like, I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, it's purposeful, and you can see the result. Like when you see Calvin Austin 5'9" getting open in the red zone, you're like, oh well. Look, I mean, I love Calvin Austin, but this is not all him, right? This is not, something happened to put the defense in a bad situation for that to happen, right? And so I think you're just seeing a lot of that where you can see the result of the intent. Whereas before, we always saw the intent. We always saw that they wanted to do those things, but I don't think I ever saw the follow through on like how it was going to work. And so I think that's going to be a big part of this offense. Pat Freiermuth is someone that I haven't mentioned yet. I think he's going to be a huge piece of the puzzle for the Steelers. I think he will be – I don't think he's going to play wide receiver, but I think he's going to be the number 2 on the team in targets. I think he's going to be a huge part of this offense. Wouldn't surprise me if he leads the team in touchdowns. Like fantasy stock through the roof, if that's your lens. But I just think he's a guy that is poised for a really, really big year.
I agree. I told you I had to get I had to get a dynasty share of him for sure this year. But yeah, I'm in full agreement. He was out in Pittsburgh last night. That's for sure. Signing some autographs and taking some pictures within the Pirates fan base. So getting himself into ready for sure. But
everybody who's anybody who was at the Pirate game last night.
I was going to say the
Ben
Steelers contingent at the Pirates
Russell
game
Wilson
last
was
night.
there. Yeah,
Deshaun Elliott was a couple sections over from where we were. My favorite QB3 and podcaster Kyle Allen in attendance as well.
Didn't pick up that one. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of Steelers contingent there at the game last night. But I want to ask you, so that's like a big picture outlook for the offense. You said, do you have one for the defense as well right now? Because like you said, the defense is kind of dominate. There's a lot more roster carryover than turnover on like there is on the opposite side of the ball. With the offense, there's more turnover. But do you have any, takeaways, big picture?
Yeah, I think the big thing is like the secondary is so much better. Like even before you get Cam Sutton in the mix, I think the secondary is so much better, than it was this time a year ago with Deshaun Elliott, with Dante Jackson. And I think with the coverage abilities of Patrick Queen, you don't have to put safeties in some of those positions. Like not only do I think the secondary is better, the secondary has a smaller job because the linebackers are better positioned to cover. And so like you take away some of the hardest responsibilities of what they were having to do, you give what was left to better players that'll be more consistently available. I think we're going to see continued competition at the slot. Nick and I talked about that earlier with guys like Beanie Bishop and Nate Metters, with Thomas Grant and Josiah Scott, until Sutton is able to play whenever that is. But I think we're going to see all three safeties. KZ is going to play, that sort of same role he played in 2022, where he was the third safety. Let him go up high and let Minka be who knows where, that wild card. I think we're going to see Minkah Fitzpatrick be Minkah Fitzpatrick again. I think he'll be able to have a much greater impact in terms of turnovers and splash plays than he did last year. And so I think this defense on paper, as it looks right now, should be one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like where's the hole on this defense? I mean, you can sit there and nitpick like depth places, but man, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, someone asked me where I'd put them right now. Like on paper, I said top 5 to 7 range.
I think it's top 5 defense. I think it could be the best defense in the league. Like it's if they stay healthy, why can't they be? I think.
And I don't disagree with you, but I want to thank you in advance for providing us with our TikTok for the day that I can post that as a take. So thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so that was a big picture thing. We talked about a guy in there, Dante Jackson. I want to ask about him because I feel like the first time that he spoke to the media, we kind of talked about where he was at and how we kind of see him fitting in, what he could be for this team, but we haven't really touched on him since then. So what has he looked like through OTAs?
Very, very strong veteran guy, kind of the only veteran in that room, understands the defense already, good communicator, tough guy. You can already see obviously the defense can't hit in OTAs, you can't actually deliver a blow, but you can tell the guys that are like, I got to hold myself back, and he's certainly one of those guys where it's like, he's not that big of a corner. And, when I kind of looked at the film and looked at the height and weight, you kind of say, okay, well, he's really fast. And, he's not had like a ton of play with his hands on the ball as of late. He did a little bit more early in his career. Okay, you can kind of get a good sense for what you're getting. The tackling part of it, you don't really know. I think he's going to be he's certainly a willing tackler. He's not that big, but I think he's going to play pretty well at the point of attack. I really like their secondary, man. I think he fits in really well. I think he's going to be a really good player. Not a star, but a really good, solid starter.
Let's talk about, still in that cornerback room, staying there. Cam Sutton edition, obviously, we expect him to be in the slot. We also expect a suspension coming down from the league to some degree. We don't know the exact length of what that's going to look like. We've speculated it would be 6 games, just going based off history and stuff. Say it is 6 games or however amount of much time that he is going to miss due to his suspension. What is the competition like? Who are some names that we should be looking at as guys that could, have a significant role on this team, especially to start the season, assuming Cam Sutton does, miss time due to suspension?
I think the 3 slot corners are Josiah Scott, Thomas Graham, and Beanie Bishop. I think those 3 guys are competing for a significant role in those first 6 games or whatever. I think there's interesting competition at safety where obviously, the top 3 guys we talked about, Minkah, Elliott, and KZ, they're in. Miles Killebrew is an all-pro special teamer. Does Trenton Thompson find a role? Does Watts find a role? Because he's kind of been a little bit of everywhere, but I think he just fits as a safety better than he does as a corner, especially because he's the 4th best big corner they have. So I think there's if I'm looking at competition, I think guys that look pretty safe to me are those ones I named, and then Russian and Trice I think are pretty well secure. But I think there's room for one more outside corner. And is it Watts? Is it somebody else, or is it an extra inside guy? And will it be 2 of those inside guys? Nate Metters is a safety. He's played really well these last couple weeks. Guy was with the Browns and the Vikings before, has a little bit of experience. Jalen Elliott is a guy that I think, that they have experience in the defense. He looks a lot better than he did last year. I think they've got some tough cuts in that secondary, but I really think those 3 slot guys, you're going to see probably 2 of them make the team. That's the way I would peg it right now. Yeah. Maybe Trenton Thompson. He's a good player, man. I don't know. I'd have a hard time cutting him too.
The group that you mentioned there for slot, those were corners. Is there like one of those safeties though? Do you think that it's possible we see a slot nickel defender?
Well, the one that the one that I think you kind of call like a catch-all would be Grayland Arnold. They just signed him,
Oh,
so
yeah,
I mean,
right.
I kind of, it's hard to give a good scouting report. I would say that I think Grayland Arnold is like the closest thing to an Elijah Riley from last year that they have, where it's like he could play safety, he could play in the slot, certainly would be a special teamer. And if you're looking for a backup that can do 2 or 3 things, he's probably the closest thing they have to that on this roster.
Gotcha. And he's going to be, jumping on a moving train here, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I saw 2
easy.
practices. I can't even give you a decent opinion of
Right.
what it looks like.
Yeah. So, we'll see what he's going to look like mandatory. And then obviously when the pads come on at training camp, but that'll be interesting. But so we talked obviously a lot there about the slot group and stuff like that. I didn't know if there was any like other specific, I guess wide receiver is the one that people have been so intrigued by, specifically towards like I would say more the bottom, but even like the bottom goes up to the number 2 because it's really behind George where there's going to be a ton of competition. So what were your takeaways from that group at OTAs?
Are you sure you already got the TikTok from this episode? Because I think
I mean, there might be more than one. Yeah, I could post one today and then maybe one tomorrow morning before we record Friday's
if I were
episode.
to rank the Steelers wide receivers based on what I feel like their performance at OTAs was, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson.
Oh boy. Okay. I mean, hey, he's a rookie. This is kind of his first. He's getting his feet wet still, but yeah, there's probably gonna be some fans that like an alarm goes. Not that it should, but I know that there's some fans that probably an alarm is going to go off here and that.
I also probably would have said Joey Porter was like the worst of the top group of corners in OTAs last year. Like they're rookies, they get better fast. Okay, but
yeah.
I think the 2 things that stand out to me, the 3 really. One is that Roman Wilson is struggling a little bit as a rookie. It's okay. It happens. I still think I have faith in the player and his abilities. Calvin Austin has been really freaking good. And they are giving him a big role. Like they are not just pigeonholing him as a slot receiver. They are putting a lot of faith in Calvin Austin to be able to do a lot of different things. Quez Watkins is an inconsistent, incomplete player. But the one thing he is really good at is also the one thing that Russell Wilson is really good at. And so I think like he is just going to be the big play guy. And that's okay. He seems to be good at it. Van Jefferson, I think, will be fine. I'm a little disappointed by his hands. I don't think he's been super consistent. I would have, you look at the numbers and you're like, why? What happened here? Like the downturn in his career. And I think, seeing that like he looks physically like, in a picture of a wide receiver and you come up with Van Jefferson. I think that kind of explains maybe some of the things that have been happening. I don't know. He seems like a good veteran presence. I think he'll be, an upgrade on Allen Robinson's production if he gets that kind of opportunity. I still think they probably need another wide receiver. But I think that would surprise some people the way things have shaken out for me at wide receiver.
I mean, Nick has shared the same sentiment to me about Calvin Austin. We really didn't touch about everyone. I know that he's also felt pretty strongly about like towards the bottom guys. He made a point to throw out Des Fitzpatrick as a guy that he thinks has played better than some guys lower down.
I think Des Fitzpatrick is like worthy of inclusion in that first group and not the like scrub bottom of the roster group. I would agree with that. I still think like the thing about Roman Wilson is that like you're seeing half the job done right. Like, a play where he'll get wide open, but then not be able to make like a tough catch. You know what I mean? Or so it's like, oh, you see the talent. It's just not all putting it together. So I think that's why I'd still like keep him where I got him. But like Des Fitzpatrick has looked very good as well. And I think is a player that can play in the NFL.
I think the one thing too that I don't know if it jumped out to me because we're talking about like Scotty Miller, but like I would have thought, because of his familiarity within the offense, that he would be a guy like early on could be certainly impressive.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the thing with him is just like He's in the right spot. He makes all the easy catches, and he makes them look easy. He's not like sort of the polar opposite, where like he's not going to overwhelm you with his talent. He doesn't have like great physical traits really anywhere. Like I know he ran a really fast 40 coming out of college, but I haven't really seen that speed at this point. So I would just say that he's gonna make all the layups and the free throws. And when you're talking about that point in the roster, that's usually good enough.
I was in my head thinking I got to ask about the quarterbacks, but actually before I do that, I even want to ask about the running backs, like behind Najee and Jalen, because there's going to be a third one. Like, is that just Cordell Patterson, or do we see like the Jonathan Ward or the UDFA running back out of Georgia? Edwards? What do we see him maybe carving out a role?
Cordell Patterson's just got here this week and didn't really do much, so I don't.
Okay.
I assume that he's got a roster spot because he's the kickoff returner.
Sure.
I don't think they're going to keep 4 running backs, so I kind of think that's it. If they do, Aaron Shamplin, third year pro out of Harvard, bounced around, was in the XFL last spring. He looks as good as anybody else. Michael Pirine has looked pretty good too. Now he's only been here a couple weeks. Was with the Kansas City Chiefs. You see some things in him, like if you really want that kind of classic third down back, where it's like pass pro, catch and run. I think he's probably the one guy that sort of fits that mold the best, if that's what you're really looking for. I could see him sticking around for that role. Who else is there? Jason Edwards. I will say like, he kind of gets the not good enough or bad enough at any one thing to stand out in a great or awful way. He's been fine, probably better than most undrafted rookies, but not like jumping off the page at anything.
I wonder if, just based off like what some people have told me in his game, because he's not a guy that like I watched a ton of film on before the draft. I didn't think he was going to be a guy that got drafted. The pass pro. So like obviously we wouldn't really be seeing that now. Yeah. So like I wonder if maybe that is something that could set him apart if you are talking about like want that aspect from a bottom of the.
If you are a rookie running back and you want to make the team in the NFL, be a great pass protector. It is the hardest thing for young running backs to do. It's the reason Jaylen Warren got the opportunity that he did. And so I'll be very interested to see how Dajon Edwards does when we get to backs on backers, because he's a big dude. So like he should be able to be a pretty good blocker. If he can do that, he can stick around for sure.
And then, like I said, I got to ask about what you think as we finish up OTAs with the way that the quarterbacks have gone through the process.
I don't really feel like I learned much about the quarterbacks. I got to be honest. They are kind of what they are, who we thought they were. Russell Wilson looks like Russell Wilson. He is very short in person. I will say that. Like you really notice how his size. And the Steelers have a pretty tall offensive line, so that doesn't help matters.
And Justin is so. Physically
Justin is quarterback, giant. Justin Fields is the best athlete I've ever in person watched play the quarterback position. He could probably play running back or wide receiver in the NFL with his athleticism. Like he just floats and he's gone. Like, but he's a very inconsistent passer. Like, but we knew that. Like, I don't think I learned much new about either of those guys. I do think we are going to see a real competition. Do
you think Justin working with the ones at all today was more of it? Because you were somebody that already thought it was going to be a competition. So I don't know that play into your thinking at all. Did you expect to see that?
Just to clarify, I'm not sure that it was as much Justin working with the ones as it was the ones working with Justin, but he got some opportunities to take snaps from Nate Herbig and to throw to the top group of receivers. I would just clarify that. It's not like he was like out there with the whole first team. They just kind of jumbled them up. It's a better way to say it.
Gotcha.
To get so they make sure that all these guys have worked with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, and no, not really. I mean, I guess it is different than last year. They didn't do that last year, so like, sure,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we're going to have a real competition. So,
But
I
like I
wasn't
said,
really
you felt
thinking
that
about
way
it from that.
regardless.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, you saw that today and we're like, oh, maybe this means we'll get the training camp and they will have a competition because you felt like there was going to be one.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
this is kind of, so I said I had a question, and it's kind of piggybacking off what most of this conversation has been, but whether it's, slots, some of those bottom of the roster, receiver spots or depth defensive line spots, whatever they might be, like what positions do you feel like are kind of up for grabs now? As like how many roster spots do you feel like are really up for grabs as we go to training camp?
Well, I still got a week of mini camp before we get to that, but I think
Oh, right. Yeah,
some
sure.
spots that I think are really up. Well, I mean, there's 3 tackles for 2 jobs. That's wide open. There's the 2 guard, the centers. That'll be a thing. I don't know what that's going to look like and when. It's been pretty consistent that Herbig's been with the first group.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver is just wide open. Not only like who makes the team, but the order of like you could put them in a bingo hopper and just 11. Slot corner. I'm very curious, like how much of a role can Peyton Wilson earn? Like he's going to make the team certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Can he get a regular role or not? I think will be an interesting question for me.
How much of that? I mean, it seems like it'd be an obvious answer, but maybe because it's like a different type of role that they would want. How much of that is going to depend on Cole Holcomb, though?
Some of it certainly, and then how quickly Wilson can pick up a part of this defense and grab onto it. He talked about being working as the dime linebacker. I don't know that I would really be like jumping for joy to be taking Patrick Queen off the field right now, but if he can do that, then that could be a good role for him, and we'll see. But I think that's still very much up in the air how much of a role he's going to have, and that's something I'm pretty interested in. And yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much. Those are the ones that I think are really just truly wide open.
We've talked a little bit about the defensive line because of the guys down on the roster. Like is the Marvin Leal going to make this roster? You feel like keep obviously not all of them, but like where's that cutoff point?
It's a good question. I think I would probably put the line right behind the Marvin Leal and right ahead of Logan Lee right now. But like that's the obviously the top 3 guys, the starters are safe, and Montravius Adams and Dean Lowry are probably pretty safe. After that, you got Loudermilk, you got Leal, you got Lee. I think probably 2 of those 3 make the team. And Braden Fehoko, I don't see how he gets forward without an injury at this point, unless they make some kind of big change from last year, even though I think he's a good player. And so I think you could be potentially looking at a couple of very talented cuts on the defensive line.
And unrelated, but I'm just now looking at we got a text to our Steelers Now group chat that and this is related to something that we've been talking about a lot on here. Cortland Sutton will be at mandatory minicamp for the Broncos next week. Mean anything to you?
Yeah, that it's not like ugly between him and the Broncos. I think that's like we talked about with Ayuk, right? Like if you want a guy to get traded, you got to have some mudslinging somewhere. That helps, and it doesn't seem like you're going to get that with Sutton and the Broncos. Doesn't mean they won't trade him, but it certainly it would be a positive.
Maybe he's going to
if he wasn't going
minicamp to maybe he's going there to trash the coach's office or barge in.
He's going to park in the wrong parking spot, which is apparently enough to just get you run straight out of Denver. So if he really wants traded, we'll know just based on where he pulls in.
There we go. Alan, anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Great conversation as always. Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Nick Faribault tomorrow.
Faribault Friday on the show.
Friday.
Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about on this episode. A question for a future episode, if it's for tomorrow with Nick and I, be sure to get them in. You can always tweet at us as well with your questions, or post at us, Zed at us, whatever. I don't know. I'm still gonna say tweet. I can't do this. Still Twitter to me. Still tweet to me. But anyways, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. If you are watching on YouTube, of course, do all that stuff. If you're listening somewhere else, do all that stuff. By now, you guys know the whole spiel. Follow me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.